Welcome back to the shops, my dimly lit corner of the basement here. I was going to show you, we've got a new package from Sculptio. They do all of my 3D printing at this point, and they're a really good balance of quality and price. That's pretty much the main reason that I use them. And I really don't have any inventory. People have been asking about that. I keep all of my files on Sculptio's website. When you order, you're ordering from them, and they ship it and handle all that sort of stuff. So I was going to open this, just showed up in the mail, so we're going to open it up and show you kind of how this process works. So let's see what happens. All right, I did want to show you, I've been working on the bells that I printed at Sculptio in Multi-Jet Fusion. This is the rig that I built so they would arrive undamaged. And then I've been painting on them, and they turn out really nice. I was looking for bells. They're harder to find on the open market. And so anyway, I've been painting bells. Sit those there, but you know, and there are metal bells available, and those are actually a lot better. But I also ordered, I don't know if you'll be able to see, oh, that's not a whistle. I ordered some metal whistles from, there's one, from Keith Wiseman. And if you're needing whistles, Keith's got really good metal whistles. You just can't beat metal for something that delicate that sits right on top of your locomotive. I would break them really quickly. In fact, I've broken metal ones before. So metal whistles, and also Keith sent me some check valves that go on the sides of non-tank locomotives for the plumbing. So this is a set of check valves, and I think there's wow, that's really hard to see. That's one that I'll be using on a future build. And that's the question, if you're going to do all this stuff, are you going to use metal bits? Or, well, anyway, I'm wondering if I can 3D print plumbing. But let's do the main thing here. This is our box from Sculptio, and I have not opened this yet, so I'm really curious how this print turned out. This is Loco041. So this is a kind of a take on the 460 War Department locomotives. Bachmann's done one in HO in 30 that's really nice. And okay, so here's our packing. Oops, address. You didn't see that. Let me get this where you can see it good. All right. And there's our part. Wow, there's always that moment when you open something for the first time and something that had formerly just lived inside your computer is now on your desk in a three-dimensional form. Oh man, okay. So this is the British version. You can see the round cab windows. The cab itself is under here, so are the front pilot and the rear beam, I guess it would be. Oh, that's kind of cool. The brakes are actually molded into place. So there's one brake cylinder, there's the other brake cylinder. And inside here, where's my pointer? There are two stacks, one straight and one tapered. Kind of a shotgun style. There's an air pump here. And then this piping, wow, that survived. There's a pipe that runs here between the water tank and the cab. And then a pipe that runs here. It's much more visible. I added some support. So the trick is going to be removing that support without damaging the plumbing, the pipe, that structure there. And then there are some supports here to remove so that the fuel bunker is free and can be glued back down. And also the back head is a separate piece on this model. So you can pull that out and detail it, because this is about as detailed as this type of printing can get. It would be possible to do a multi-jet fusion back head with a lot more detail. It's a bit stronger material than this stuff. But check it out though. That's nice and straight. Wow, that's cool. And so the pilot's going to look good. I'm curious how that fits. And so this is 041. This is the more authentic British version. And this is a much older print, and it's already on the mechanism. This is 040. And so this is the Bachmann HO 460 locomotive without the tender, obviously. So if you are wanting to do something with your decoder, I think you can fit, well, you can fit the smaller ones back here for sure in the fuel bunker. And so, yeah, this one's already been, I need to go back and use some of my newer techniques to smooth out the sides of the tanks and some of the more visible areas, because I'm learning better ways to go from this to this, and to get the really smooth surfaces to really smooth those out and make those look a bit better. In fact, let me show you what I've been working on. Let's sit these guys over here. This is, what is it? Loco040. Yeah, still a little bit shady right in through there. But I've been trying to get a nice smooth finish on the 3D printed surfaces, and that is a hobby in itself. And so this one's coming along. And I would pair that with that tender. Anyway, it's a work in progress. There's still a lot to be done on this one. And I was going to show you briefly. The question is, I've included as many parts as I can. Like usually I'll include a couple of air pumps or an air pump. There are a couple of designs. And then stacks and a back head, that sort of thing. But, really in terms of locomotives like, well, here's a good example. Like this one, the handrails and the handrail stanchions, you can't do that in plastic or any kind of printed material right now. So it's just hard to beat metal, certainly for handrails and for the stanchions. And then for the plumbing, this one is bent wire and castings from Keith Wiseman. I do get, and sometimes I get the stanchions from Keith as well. I was able to use the stanchions from the original HO model on this version. But it's really hard to beat metal for certain parts. And but this is that's a metal dynamo on the top there too. Yeah, if there's a dynamo, I'll try to include one because it really doesn't add anything to the cost of the print. But in terms of quality and in terms of weight, you're almost always better off going with a metal part, just for a bunch of reasons. There's a headlight, that's nice. Anyway, that's what's on the workbench. The moment of truth is when you remove all the sprue supports and try and fit this on this mechanism. That's when you find out if you designed it correctly. So I will do that and update you, because wow, that plumbing, that amazes me that survived the printing process, and it did a really nice job of it too. You can see a couple of things I'm going to have to work on. And if the most important thing, well, an important thing to remember is the first thing to do once you've removed it from the supports, once you've kind of detached all the parts and smoothed off the the places where they connected to the sprue, is to wash everything in soap and water. That is a big deal because otherwise your primer won't have. Sometimes your primer, well, there's loose powder on the surface. Those rivets are going to need to be upsized. It's always something. All right, we will show you more when we have more to show you. Cool. It's been a couple of weeks. I guess you'd never know that. Because of video, we can just edit things together. But here are all the parts for the Loco040 off their sprues and test fitted on the mechanism. And so you can kind of get the idea of how it's going to look as a finished locomotive. And the size, actually I measured the length of this, and then I figured out the length of the new Bachmann. Bachmann just announced their 262 War Department tank locomotive, which I've measured out to be about 130 millimeters long, and this ends up being exactly 130 millimeters long. So I think we're very similar size-wise. Those actually haven't shipped yet, so I can't say for sure. Really glad to see them still making things, though. And I was going to show you how the parts come apart. There's the roof and the bunker. I will leave the stack on. I actually have designed the pilots to work with the existing pilot on the Bachmann 460, the HO scale 460. So I had to fab up I had lost that piece for this mechanism, so it was just simpler to fab up a replacement out of wood. And let's get this off the mechanism. There it goes. And then there is the back head. And of course this one's already changed colors, and I'm testing different approach to rivets on it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And there's the main part of our kit, and the only other part that's separate is the stack. And doing some adaptation on the underside. I think everything's working good now. So there's how that works. That's all one piece. So I'm curious to see how different this is going to look in black. And there are really two approaches to painting something like this. What I've tried to do is to print rivets into the model and print them oversized so that they get polished down to about the right size. And you can see some of that. Well, you might be able to see some of them on camera. So that's always the attempt, is to cast as much detail into the print as possible, and to cast it in a way that it will, first of all, print, but second of all, survive the polishing process, because that really does make a big difference in the quality of low-cost prints like these. And so the question is, what's our next step? We've talked about that some before, and I was talking with different people about different types of primers. And one thing I've been trying that works really well is black gesso, and actually I bought this at our local Hobby Lobby. It was on sale for $4. Usually it's $8, but it's one of those 50% off sales. Come on, this works really good. I mean, it provides a very nice matte finish that paint can go over. Paint seems to stick to it well. The other alternative, oops, I'm not prepared. Hang on. The other alternative to that as a primer coat is the Vallejo Surface Primer. And then people have talked about using different products. I just realized I don't have room to even show these on camera. Different products here. This is one that some people use as a Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 primer. There you go. It's a big can, and it stops rust. And And that's pretty dense. What I did use that on this print. This was a really early print that I had done probably by Shapeways, and it had a lot of grain to it and a lot of roughness. And so using the Rust-Oleum primer over here, I was able to get it pretty smooth with a lot of sanding. And probably wet sanding would work well too. So I'm curious what this would look like. I mean, I still need to sand down the domes and some parts of the stack. It's a, I don't know, kind of a tedious process. But it took what was a pretty poor print, really. And this was done by Shapeways probably 3 or 4 years ago. So things have definitely changed. And then I've also used, and I need to test it again, Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. And this, I think, is a little bit better than the Rust-Oleum because it's just finer. But the question is, do you try to preserve the rivets and sand around the rivets, smooth things out between them, but kind of avoid scraping the rivets off? Or do you sand the whole surface smooth and then do your own rivets, either with rivet castings from a company like Tichy, I think, makes rivets, which means drilling individual holes and placing each individual rivet, which the results are really nice, but wow, that's tedious. So I'm testing some of these rivet decals. This is a sheet from, do it right side up, from Micromark, and I think they come from Archer. And that's a bunch of rivets there. And these are actually, this is a decal sheet. Decal? Yeah, I don't know. And you cut it out and apply it like a regular decal, and then use like Solvaset or something of that nature, get in focus, to help affix it to the surface of the model, and then paint over the top of that. And that's what I've been testing on this back head, just on the edges there. Let's see, can you see that? Yeah. So these are the large O-scale rivets, and they're spaced pretty far apart, which I think I'd like to have some that were closer together for boilers and tanks and stuff, but it's a much quicker way, a much easier way to install a whole line of rivets at one time and not have to individually drill them in. So there's that. We've talked about primers, and I was going to show you this is the one of the early models of the American version. This would be Loco040. Let's take the headlight off. So this is, the same thing, but slightly, well, you can tell the cabs are different. And this cab sits a little bit further forward over the drivers, so it's a little bit more balanced. You really have to work around that mechanism. And of course, this has got some decals, and the black paint really helps. But these are basically two versions of the same thing, and that's what Loco040 and 041 are. There we go. I will provide a link to the Sculpteo site, and please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll go through it as soon as I can, which at this rate, that might be a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys. See you soon.